Recording, Valley's People, episode 25, duration 30 minutes, recorded 6th of the 12th, 81, replay date to be advised.
Welcome once again to the Valley's People. Today we're going to meet the Australian Women's Air Rifle Champion and as well the Hunter Valley's leading international rugby union referee. Two very distinct people with a great story to tell, and I hope you can join us. I'll be back in just a moment. Thanks for joining us today. Our first guest comes from Terrigal, although we could, I guess, say Jesmond originally. It's the Australian Women's Title Air Rifle Champion, Jan Kobier. Welcome to the Valley's People, Jan.
Thank you, Ron.
It's always a great thrill to welcome Australian champions onto the program because it's not easy to attain.
Well, it's a great thrill for me too.
I can imagine it would be. And I think the first thing we have to clear up is just the definition of air rifle. It's a little different for the other forms of rifle shooting, is it not?
Yes, it is quite different. Probably in the action of the rifle is what makes it so different from others. It's a lot more gentle in its action, which is probably why I have taken it up. It doesn't have a big kickback like a lot of other rifles, like the big bores, like 303s and so on. And also the ammunition that it's used for it is much different. It's not a bullet by any means. It's a very light lead pellet.
303s, I remember those in the school cadets, and nearly just throw your shoulder out every time you fired them.
Yes, well this thing doesn't have anything like that, thank heavens. It's very, very gentle, and also the noise that is given off is very quiet too. So a lot of people think, oh, women shooting rifles, you must be quite robust or sturdy and strong to withstand that force, but it's not like that at all. It's quite gentle.
Yes, so most people have seen Annie Get Your Gun too, so I suppose they refer to you as Annie Oakley.
Yes, and it's a lot harder to shoot than what Annie Get Your Gun makes out too.
I could imagine it would be. It's a German sport basically, isn't it, this particular form of rifle?
Yes, this particular type of rifle shooting did originate in Germany, so it's got a lot of traditions attached to it as well. It originated in small centres where each town had a sporting guild attached to it, and the actual rifle shooting with air rifles changed as the population grew and people found that they couldn't use big powered guns in highly populated areas, and this particular type of rifle shooting became adapted to that situation, so it grew from there.
I suppose it came to Australia through the early German migration.
Yes, it did. As we know, there are lots of German people around South Australia, and it grew very quickly and established itself originally in South Australia and then eventually moved up into New South Wales as German populations settled there. And I think the earliest it started in New South Wales was probably in Sydney, the club called Kobier, which is at Stanmore, and it was around the 1960s. So it's only been in this area for just over 20 years.
It's almost an indoor sport if you've got big enough room indoors. You're really shooting at how many metres are you?
It's 10 metre distance, a freestanding position, so you haven't got anything to rest on but your own body. And should your body move, of course the rifle will move with you. So you have to be complete control.
I must show everybody the bullseye because I don't think anyone other than the person who understands the sport could appreciate the fact that on this card we have in fact 6 bullseyes, and I'd like to know what that looks like at the 10 metres.
Well, of course, at the centre of that bullseye, or the bullseye which is in the centre, is the size of a pinhead, and at 10 metres you lose sight of that. You haven't got any telescopic assistance to direct you to that, and through the ring at the end of the rifle all you see is that small black ring, and you just centre that up. Well, that's what I do, centre it up inside the ring and hope that it's centralised, that the pellet will hit or at least touch that tiny pinhead in the centre.
Right, because even though it's a small enough target, you're looking for the centre of the target, which is what, 10 points, I guess?
That's right.
It's hard enough to actually see the actual lines on here, but you're going out then to a gradient of what? You go out to what?
Well, the lowest score, which you hope you don't ever hit, is 1, which is what, about 3/4 of an inch out from the centre. So you have, it doesn't take much movement of your body, which then moves the rifle for it to perhaps hit that lower score.
Well, what we're talking about there, isn't it, is the real art of the performance. The fact that you have to be so steady and
Yes,
in such immense concentration that it's almost a different sport.
I didn't believe how people could get a sweat up talking about just standing there and holding this rifle until I got into it. And it is true, you do have to concentrate immensely, get yourself completely devoid of anything else that's going on around you, and concentrate wholly and solely on, not just on the target, but what your body is doing at the same time to get everything in rhythm and working together so that it all just goes off at the right time.
Yes, well, how many shots do you have in competition?
In official competitions, you have a total of 50 shots. 40 of those are counted. The other 10 are used for practice, so you can use those at the beginning of the time, if you like, just to get yourself into position and practice and see that your rifle is going all right. So over an hour and a half, which is the official time for those 40 shots, you can have to stretch out your shooting quite a bit if you need that full hour and a half, which a lot of the top shooters do use, and which is where the concentration comes in too.
And the art form is trying to hit the centre of that bullseye that you can just
Yes.
rarely see at 10
It's a
metres.
marvellous feeling to, when you bring back your card, to see your shot has hit. And if you have been totally concentrating, you know where that shot has gone.
Really?
I can really sense. And
You can't
know.
see it so
No,
much.
oh, you can see it. It is, the target is lit up with a light above it, but it is a little difficult to pick it out accurately. But you do know. I mean, once you've been shooting for a long while, you get an idea of where your shot has gone.
Yeah, and when did you start all this, Jen?
Oh, about 7 years ago I started. Before I was married, I met my husband-to-be. He was a member of the German club in Newcastle, and his family was very involved in a lot of the German club activities. And the German club then wanted to start up some smaller subgroups, and one of those groups was the air rifle group. So he was approached, and his family, namely his brother, to get this air rifle group going. So really they were the founders of the air rifle group in Newcastle, and that was 10 years ago. So I picked it up 7 years ago, and I've kept with it ever since. I've really
so you
enjoyed
just took
it.
the philosophy, if you can't beat them, join them.
Oh, well, it's not really a spectator sport. You can't really sit at 10 metres. As I said, it's very difficult to see it, and you can't watch it. And I used to sit outside the range waiting for him. So he said, come on, it's about time you had a go at it. And I was very fortunate in that I picked it up very quickly and was able to score fairly high results each time and progressively improve my results each time.
To become Australian champion eventually.
Yes, of course you don't think of that to start with. You're just competing against yourself each time to improve on your score.
And had you done any shooting before that at all?
Absolutely no, only goal shooting in netball.
Yeah.
But I was just one of those that was fortunate enough to be able to, I think maybe I had the eye for it, I don't know. But it just sort of came a little naturally, I suppose.
Yes, you're in a sporting family. If it were not only your husband Peter introducing you to this sport, but your sister is doing very well in VJs, and Dad was a sailor, was he not?
Yes, that's right. And my family's always been interested in sports. Dad always had the philosophy that if you could be involved with people through sports, you would enjoy yourself much more, and I've found that too. So through this type of shooting, I've learned a lot about the German traditions and other things that go with it.
Yes. Well, it's not just a game of rifle shooting either, because as you'd explained, there's so much concentration. I was wondering if you could just take us through, as Australian champion, into that sequence of firing, the sort of psyching you must do to yourself. What is it you're aiming to do from the moment you pick up the rifle?
Well, I try consciously to get myself into sort of a vacuum in my mind, a state of mind where I know what I'm doing in conjunction with what I'm doing with the rifle. And to do that, I usually try to pick up a song to sing in my mind to keep my concentration going, and completely keep myself not watching anybody else or anything else that's going on in the shooting range at the time, and then get myself into a rhythm. And you've got 40 shots to do that, and if you can keep that rhythm going, you find that keeps your concentration going.
And you maintain the same rhythm for each shot,
Yes,
do you?
if I can.
You go right back to zero?
Yes, that's right. Each time I stop and start, And that's
Like a reject takeoff. You've got to start right from the start again.
Just about. If anything interrupts you by any chance, if you lose that concentration, if you waver from that rhythm, you find that it puts you off and you're fighting against yourself then to get back into the rhythm, and it can come off as a 1 or a 2 instead of a 10.
I'm intrigued by that immensely. Can you reproduce that anywhere? I mean, could you do that choreography for me now? I suppose that's unfair, isn't it, when you're not in competition, to ask you to concentrate
well,
so much?
I'm first of all, I'm not dressed as I would be.
How would you be dressed there?
Well, the clothing that some of the shooters wear, and I try to wear myself sometimes, it usually involves a lot of heavy clothing to keep your body very rigid. There's a very heavy long-sleeve jacket that comes halfway down your body to keep your torso very rigid, because you're standing position, your feet don't move around at all.
Not for 90 minutes?
Not for 90 minutes,
Oh,
that's
wow.
right. It's a long time. And then, of course, they have special shoes that have very squared off type soles so that the foot doesn't roll too much and cause any body movement. And those shoes are laced right up to about the shin, a bit like mountain climbing boots, again to keep the ankles stiff and so that the body doesn't waver around at all. And then there's a very big, thick, heavy glove that you wear on the hand where you're resting the rifle. And that again is to hold the rifle in position and also stops your hand getting very sore.
Yes, I can realise now how unfair it was of me to ask you to sort of show us that, Jan. But if I don't say anything, or if we just remain silent for that period, could you go through that rhythm of firing?
I should try.
Okay, and I promise I won't say a word.
Right.
That breaks the trance.
Yes.
Yes. Well, Jan, congratulations on being Australian Women's Title Champion for air rifles. Thank you very much for being with us today.
And thank you.
I'll be back with our second guest in just a moment in today's Valley's People. Welcome back to the Valley's People. Our next guest is a man who's served rugby union in the Hunter Valley for over 30 years as an official and as an international referee. John Minor. Welcome to the Valley's People, John.
Thank you, Ron.
I might say I don't think I've seen you since we played cricket together in very early city and suburban days.
Oh, they were Hallian days, weren't they? We played well and we won premierships. We did marvellous things together.
Yes, we were different. You scored runs. That was the
That's
difference.
true.
Yeah. John, since then you went into the form of rugby union, and the difference about John Minor when we talk about referees is the fact that you went in virtually determined to be a top-class referee right from the start. Many times there are players, when they feel as it's just a lull for playing, decide to be a referee, but you had your mind on being a referee right from the start, as I understand.
Yes, Ron. I wasn't able to train, and I didn't see any potential in myself as an Australian representative, so I figured the next best thing would be to be a referee. So I began my refereeing career very early, so I had plenty of time to develop myself, and so it was.
And the thing I think the people in Hunter Valley remember is the fact that you were in the centre on international rugby union clashes in Newcastle against the Fiji and All Blacks and Ireland, I think, wasn't it? But
Yes,
just
all
about
three.
every touring side that came here.
Yes, Ron.
I often wonder what it means to someone to get the international match as a sort of culmination of his career.
Well, it's the ultimate, to be recognised as being the referee capable of controlling such games. But mind you, it has its problems because you come under extreme pressure. Now, you come under pressure on a Saturday afternoon, but you come under even greater pressure when you reach international standard. Not only are you obliged to control the game and keep the players under control, but you have to withstand the pressures of the players upon you. They're trying to work you, and I guess this sledging, or sludging as they call it in cricket, is nothing new. It's been going on for years in rugby union. The players harass you in a very polite way. They'll query every decision you make and give a look of disgust and imply that, how would you ever know anything about the game? And thus they work you, and they look for strong points and weak points. And that's part of the game. You accept the players doing that, and they expect to be able to do it, but to be able to stand it, I guess that's the keynote. And
so team tactics is really tactics against the referee as well. I suppose it's as far as the referee allows them to go, though, is it?
Oh, yes, yes. Most teams go out prepared to play 16 men against them. They argue that they play the other 15 opponents, and they've got to argue with the referee as much as possible. And it's an accepted part of the game.
And did sides like Ireland and Fiji and All Blacks argue against you?
Oh, yes, very much so. I remember the Fijians, of course, in particular. Whenever you awarded a penalty against them, or ever spoke to them for some misdemeanour, they would invariably answer you in Fijian and give the impression they didn't understand. But if you made a comment to them that was, or if they want to make a point to you, invariably it was a well-rounded Oxford accent would say, "I say, sir, that's not quite the way the law reads, you know." Most of these fellows had played in England,
yes, yes.
And they had a bilingual problem on the field. I had a bilingual problem on the field, not them.
Yeah, Bulla, Mr. Minor.
Well, that's right.
Then you received, at the end almost of what people would regard as a lifetime of being a referee, you became life member, firstly, of the Newcastle Referees Association, and they're the sort of honours that aren't given very lightly.
No, they recognise your services, and I was very fortunate to be one of the fellows made a life member of Newcastle Rugby Union referees.
I guess your excitement was even grander, though, when you became the first country member ever to become a life membership of the New South Wales Rugby Union.
Yes, yes, that was the ultimate, because I felt I'd broken the barrier. You know, for a long while, New South Wales Rugby Referees Association seemed to be confined to North Sydney, South Sydney and Western Suburbs. That seemed what New South Wales stood for. And for 84 years, they'd never had a country president. They'd never had a country life member. And I was fortunate enough to be the first life member to be elected to the New South Wales body from the country. And that was a big thing for me, but it certainly was a big thing for country referees, because I felt we had come of age, we'd been recognised by our city cousins, as it were, and at long last New South Wales was what it was truly meant to be, New South Wales.
But then again, of course, you've got to approach things objectively, haven't you? So you just can't serve the Hunter Valley. You have to make many compromises in that position?
Well, you have to realise you are a New South Wales member. It involves a lot more travelling in my capacity. I'm on the New South Wales Appointments Board, and I'm chairman thereof, so that you have to be ultimately fair. I guess you'd probably be over fair. You make sure that you don't favour any one more than the other. And it seems to be that it's working out, because they've re-elected me, thank goodness. And but you do work hard to make sure that you give recognition to those entitled to recognition, and make sure you don't have any bias one way or the other. It's just an extension of refereeing.
Yes, you must give recognition to the Hunter Valley footballer, though. He's one of the best actors in Australia, really.
Oh, if some of these fellows put up for the Academy Award, they'd win them hands down. I've got one particular guy in mind who would be probably as good an actor as any. I had occasion to penalise one of his players. The incident was that his player, and I use these vague terms because I don't want to be mentioning names, he threw a punch, knocked out another player, and I was just ready to send him off, or to penalise him. And the captain came racing up and put on a great act and addressed this player and said, "You do that again and the referee won't have to send you off, I'll send you off. Now you get back in the scrum and you behave yourself, and I don't want to see any more of that dirty play." And he was carefully leading him away from me, you see. And I said, "Well, that's good, I like that, but why don't I penalise him and caution him, and then you can take him back." But he was trying to sort of con me with his indignation. And he probably gave him a pat on the back as he got in the scrum anyhow.
10 out of 10 for trying that.
Oh, they've tried all the time.
The thing about, so we say the international class rugby union referee and the international class rugby league referee, John, have you ever aspired to move over to codes?
No, I haven't had any inclination in that direction. I don't think anyone ever does. We don't. You make your mark in the area in which you set out. I think there's a difference in the philosophy, and I can only speak of the philosophy of rugby union.
Right.
But the rugby union referee is considered to be the 31st man on the field. The laws provide he should exist. In fact, when the games first started, they didn't have referees.
Really?
No, they managed to get on without them. And I suppose a lot of people feel the game would be a lot better if we went back to those days. But they would come together, 30 players, they'd make their own arrangements, and then they'd play the game, and if there was any dissatisfaction, they would argue amongst themselves, much as children play a game nowadays.
Yes.
But we've always worked on the philosophy that the referee is the least important. It's 30 men playing a game of rugby, and they're out for their enjoyment, and it's our function to assist in that. Now, as a result of that, you'll never see the referee being highlighted. He doesn't come on the field first. He'll always come out mixed up with the players. Whenever you see a rugby match take place, unless there's some specific reason for presentation or otherwise, but he'll come out and he's out there before you realise he's out there. And that's what we look for, that he is to be the least conspicuous. The players are the main members of the game.
One of the great things you've been able to put back into rugby union, I think, John, would be the fact that you're much sought after as someone who gives lectures on the interpretation of the laws of rugby. But I'm just wondering how much interpretation there can be placed upon a static law.
Well, you should come to some of the law meetings. You've got good questions. Well, it's not so much the law. It's what the law is meant to say and the way it should be applied, always working on the assumption it's for the benefit of the players. Now, you know, we can teach guys to read the law book. Anyone can read a law book and become word perfect, and he can go out there and he can blow his whistle to his heart's content.
Yes.
And we get a terrible game. The players don't enjoy it, the spectators detest it, and the referee doesn't really feel he's done any good in any direction. Now, the idea is to understand what the play is all about. Why are they trying to do this? The philosophy would be to reward good play and punish bad play. Now, if someone does something wrong, you don't blow your whistle immediately, because it's quite possible that there may come good things for the opposing team. Oftentimes, for the sake of it keeping the game flowing, you may overlook a slight misdemeanour because you see in the long run it's going to be to the advantage of the non-offending team. Now, this is something that you try and teach players, you certainly try and teach referees, but it's something that you can't teach all referees.
No,
it's
and you can't teach without maturity either, I wouldn't think.
No, I think that if they go to the top too quickly, then they don't get the background, or they don't understand the players. You've got to understand players.
Your other profession, John, not being rugby union for a moment, but that of optometry. You recently went to England to deliver a paper at one of the conventions, and it just struck me when I read that it was an interesting concept. What would someone from the Hunter Valley in the field of optometry be taking to a convention in England for a like mind? I mean, where is there a variation or difference in skills?
Well, when I wrote I was going to England to go to this convention because I wanted to learn what they had to tell me. And they wrote back and said, would you like to deliver a paper? Now, the same thing went through my mind. You know, what could I take to England from the Hunter Valley? Now, I'm just an ordinary grassroots optometrist. I don't do research. I do general practice, and that's it. So I thought the same thought went through my mind. What will I take? So I started to compare the things I see every day with the things they may see over there. And it was quite interesting to find that there's a tremendous difference.
Really?
It comes from the fact that we live in a warm, sunny climate. For example, in England, hard contact lenses are all the rage. Everyone wears hard contact lenses. In Australia, nowhere near the number. They can't tolerate soft contact lenses in England as well as we do out here, and vice versa. And I think it's due to our climate and to the heat and various other features.
Our lifestyle, very much easier with the softer ones.
Most definitely our lifestyle. We have on the east coast of Australia a badge of being a surfie. You've probably seen those red little tissues that grow from the nasal side to the eye, the red badge of a pterygium. That's a little growth of skin on the eye. Now, everyone who surfs in Australia gets one of those. Everyone who lives in the middle areas of Australia with a lot of dust gets one of those. And so they're everyday things to us. And I mentioned this, and there was one chap in the audience who said, gosh, I saw one of those about 10 years ago, you know, first one I'd ever seen. And in England they don't have them because they don't have our climate.
And you're seeing them every day, I presume?
Part of the deal, yes.
Yeah, well, that answers that, because I was just intrigued by what you were delivering a paper on in London, those sort of things.
Yeah, the differences, the common differences are the differences.
Yes, and you've been involved too in Rotary. The mini youth exchange is quite unique to the Hunter Valley, isn't it, and pioneered by you?
Well, pioneered by my club. I wouldn't take all the credit. But I was on a youth program with the Newcastle Rotary Club, and it seemed to me that we were sending one person overseas for 12 months, which was very good, but I thought it might be better if we could send a group of people overseas for a limited length of time, and thus give more people the opportunity to live and understand other countries on a smaller scale. And so this idea was pioneered by the Newcastle Rotary Club. We did it on a fortnight exchange with the Auckland Club in New Zealand, and we sent children under 16 across, and then they came across to us, and now it's gone on to district level, and it's on a much larger scale, and it works very successfully.
Well, that's good, John. It's good that you should be serving the youth of the Hunter Valley as you've served them as a rugby union referee. Our congratulations for that. Thanks for being with us today on the Valley's People, and I'll be back in just a moment. Our guests today in the Valley's People have been Jan Kobier, who's the Australian Ladies Air Rifle Champion, and also John Miner, 30 years an official of Rugby Union, very proudly from the Hunter Valley. I hope you've enjoyed the Valley's People, and for the time being I'll say goodbye for now.